So the last one, well, I guess second to last one, we'll do these kind of together. Personal growth is the process of understanding yourself and pushing yourself to reach your highest potential. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was if I become the best version of myself or I become a better version of myself, it makes it easier on other people, right? It makes everyone around you better situation for them too. How in the last few months have you seen growth in yourself? Like, have you seen some growth in yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, my work relationship with one of those coworkers I was talking about
Yeah.
before, um, I've been really trying hard to, and maybe it could be because I'm trying hard and not using the grace of God, but to make things different between us because,
Yeah.
I mean, we have a good relationship, but there was times where he was honest with me about um, that maybe I'm too outspoken about
Yeah.
how I feel, right? And again, this goes back to feeling like we have a brother relationship, right?
Yeah.
I don't view him as a coworker. I view
Yeah.
him as a brother, and but that also there has to be a line that's drawn at a certain time of the day, right? When we
Because
work
you are the
together.
supervisor, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But then I don't want to make the environment so unappealing that he can't bring an issue.
You don't want
to
to
me,
make
right?
it where it only goes
Right.
top to bottom.
So,
you want to have the exchange of ideas.
So I've been working on that, and then after coming back from the prison ministry,
Yeah.
like my heart was just kind of flipped upside down, and knowing that man, there's been growth,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot more room for growth to
Yeah.
happen. And
Mm-hmm.
all this week I've been trying not to make any kind of comments on some of the, let's just say, cycles that he goes through.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like the definition of insanity is doing
Yeah,
the same
same
thing
thing.
over, expecting different results, right?
Yeah.
So, seeing that cycle over, instead of just looking at it and going, okay, not this again. It's okay.
Yeah.
Stop, think, guy. What do you want to say? And
Yeah.
just try to respond with something encouraging. Try to lift him up and how great of a person he is.
Yeah.
And just remind him that God is working all these things out, and if he would just trust
Yeah.
in God, that more than myself, right? Because sometimes I think that he looks. He tells me all the time, "You're the only guy that I've ever been able to talk to.
Yeah.
There's no one else in my life, although he's got some good friends,
Yeah.
and I should be honored that he trusts me with anything.
Yeah.
But I also have to be very gentle with that situation because I'm, as a leader, not just in my workplace, but as a spiritual leader,
Mm-hmm.
almost you could even say spiritual father,
Yeah.
that I don't want to hurt him, that I want to lead him in the right spot, and I don't have all the answers.
Right.
So I got to keep leading him back to the one who does, and so
Right.
my personal growth in that has been great. And this week, and now that it's been, before it was just like I'm going to make an improvement. A couple of days go by and it doesn't really improve. Right? But
Comes and
now,
goes. It's kind of like tides.
It's just, I think a lot of times too, it's not just a mental position; it's a heart position.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
I would
because
agree
I
with
had to
that.
break through a wall, and it's not that I didn't have love for the guy. It's just that again, that bond that we had was more of a brother and a brother and brother relationship. Not even a coworker or supervisor.
Yeah.
And so now, when I line back things up, okay, I got to be a coworker, supervisor. I can be a brother to a brother, and I can also
Yeah.
be a father
Yeah.
to a son, right?
Mhm.
And so, just knowing that I can shift all those things in the right position during any time of the day helps from a personal growth.
Yeah, and that's important because we talk about everybody's different, but everybody's different in different situations too. Like the same person is different throughout the day, throughout different situations, and being able to see that has its benefits, right? Helps you as a leader, and I think, like I talk a lot and I joke around with a lot of people, but I listen a lot, and people are always like, "How do you seem to be like in the spots that you need to be in?" And I was like, well, one, I was like, I listen and I'm observing. I see somebody that I think needs help, and I'm not thinking like because they can't do it, but like I see somebody's hands are full, like or for working on something. if you're doing a project, I'm helping you. Like, I know the work that we're doing, so I'm trying to get the things ready to have the right tools when you need the tools ready. And it's not just me, right? I think, Holy Spirit works in us in situations to be like, hey, in this situation, like, he doesn't need the supervisor. He needs the brother, right? And the same thing with me. Like, I had to get on to a guy at work. Like, we're not in the same department, right? We work together. He's in a different department, but we still have to do our work on the same stuff, right? And so we're still signing off on it. And we were talking about a situation, and I think it was a floating holiday. So we were working, and hardly anyone else was there. And I was like, hey, man, like, he said something, and I was like, I'm not going to be like just good old laugh it off Brian at this point. I was like, I felt convicted, like, hey, this is something that I'm going to correct, not because he needs to be corrected, but I was like, he's believing a lie right now that is hurting him. And so I changed from just like coworker to like a catalyst pastor essentially, like, and kind of went through, and I was like, look, man, this unforgiveness that you're harboring, that is a root of bitterness, and like this is what it's causing, and these are the problems that it's causing in your life. Like, can you see that? And and the relationship between them, seeing thing I haven't seen it be how it was. So whether or not it took root, what I said, but being able to judge that situation, right? A lot of that's going to be Holy Spirit, right? It's going to work through, kind of move us where we need to be, but just listening to people. And I've been there 14 months, right? So this has probably been about 10 months I've been there, but I've been building that relationship with them, right? So, if I hadn't built that relationship, I wouldn't have been able to speak into him, right? And so if I was worried about what he was going to think about me for saying it, I wouldn't have said it, right? So that's a misconception.
Right.
If I didn't have the integrity, I would just let it slide, right? Things like that. And then my why, like you talked about, God, that's the why. Like, we need to raise people up. Like, that's why I feel so strongly about the leadership, is we need to raise people up. And so, I made the decision, and I was able to point out the root cause analysis of how this was affecting his work. And I would like to think I've seen some growth in him as well, like just through some conversations, and that's nice to see in other people. But I think, like, for me, like, I'm always more critical on myself than anybody else is on me.
Sure.
And I think just being able to sit down and look back at this and be like, oh man, we went through all these things, and like, I remember, yep, and being able to take note of, like, these are the things I need to improve on, and at least trying, right? A little bit of effort and failing is still better than not trying it at all. Like the routine this week, I figured out, like, okay, I tried to make this routine, like, I didn't do so well on this. Okay, next week, this is how I'm going to improve that. And I guess the last one that's on here says personal reflection. So it says, let's take a look back at where we've come related to where we started. So we basically addressed all these things. As far as doing something like this again, do you have any ideas on other topics or ways to improve certain things, or just anything that would be beneficial as a leader? Because you're a supervisor at work, right? That's a leadership position.
Right off the bat, there's probably one thing, but I would have to sit down and think about it a little bit. But just talk about scenarios, right? Like, as far as being in, you can probably give some examples, but like good scenarios and bad scenarios, how you react to those, right? And and because here's the thing, you would think, okay, well, a good scenario, it would be good, but it also can puff you up with pride. It could, it can make you, too sure about, yourself, as far as thinking that you got everything figured out, right? And so now I don't need leadership. I'm just the leader, right? And so things like that.
I'm the leader is probably the worst.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
So I've heard it said before, I get paid to lead, I don't get paid to know. So it's like, but how do you lead when you don't know what I'm doing? So it's kind of that kind of scenario. But and obviously, a bad scenario would be just, how do we work through those things, and how do we find leadership in that bad scenario?
I like that. That's a good point. We did this thing when I worked in residential life in college. It was called Behind Closed Doors. Yeah. And so it was the training that we did before the year started, and you'd walk up to a door in the residence hall, and it just had a little piece of paper that maybe had one or two sentences, and you had no idea what was going on the other side of that door, and you had to open. You know, you got a minute to think about it, and then you had to open the door, or well, you knock, right, whatever. You had to engage the situation, and it was really really beneficial. Like, so I like that idea of setting up scenarios in leadership. That's really good. And the other thing that you would like personally, I know because mainly at the beginning it was just me and you, so we talked some about business planning and things like that. Do you think that would be something beneficial to?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, maybe as a subcategory, if there was people who wanted to do that kind of deal,
like as its own group,
kind of like a branch off to its own.
Yeah. Okay.
And just supporting each other on how to actually make those things work, and more like almost like an accountability, but also teaching.
Yeah.
Help teach these things.
That's cool. I like that. Those are good ideas. I like the scenarios one.
I did want to touch on personal growth. Something you said earlier. You said, and I love that you said it. You said that I'm a listener, and I like to think that I was a listener, and then I realized sometimes I listen to talk. And,
oh man, I'm saying big thing.
And I think it's not so much that the reason I listen to talk is because when my coworker would be like starting the morning off with something I didn't want to hear, I was trying to hurry up, put a solution out there to make them quiet, right? Because I'm not a morning person, but then again, I have to work in that area as personal growth because somebody's depending on me early in the morning.
Yeah.
I walked into a Kohl's and I had to get the system on test. We were there to do an inspection, and the lady's all like, "I just got here. It's 7:00 in the morning," and and I was thinking, man, you could have got here on time, or you could, whatever, got here early, drank your coffee already. But then I'm thinking to myself, that's me, right?
And so that's one of the hardest things to say. That's me.
And so if I prepared myself, I heard Joyce Myers talk about a story about her and her husband, and he was running, in the retirement, he was running off to play golf every day, and before they even had any time together, and she was telling God, if he goes and hits that ball one more time, but then she realized, I'm already making myself mad before I'm even mad. I'm setting myself up for failure. This is the route in which I'm moving this day. But she's like, but if I sit with my Father and I commune with Him and I plan what the day should look like, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. She's setting herself up for success to be able to at least react to certain things the way she needs to react. Mm-hmm. I would like to say that we can all have a perfect day if one of those exists, but I might have to wait to heaven on that one. But that's
I've had some pretty good days. I've had some pretty good ones. I saw a picture pop up on Facebook a couple times recently in the last month or so, and it was a drawing, right? And it said listening to respond, and it had water coming down and water splashing off of a brick, and then it said listening to understand. And it had water falling down, and it was onto a sponge. And I was like, man, that is such a good picture. Like, it's very simple. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? Like, it's simple to understand, right? And the base of it is, and this ties into building relationships, like, no one is going to care how much you know until they know how much you care. And then, what's the other one? It's seek first to understand, before, seek first to understand before being understood. And the majority of the time, people don't want solutions. Like, I've had to realize this in my marriage, right? Like, as a guy, I hear a problem, I want to fix it. Like, that's how I'm wired. All right, problem, solution. And that's what I do for work, right? We have problems, you have to come up with solutions for these problems. And so sometimes, like, I've had to just be like, I'm just gonna be quiet. Like, she just wants me to listen to her, sit down and listen to her. And that part of it is so important. I don't always get it right, but I try. Right. And I think, like, if somebody's listening, like, well, how do I get to be a better listener, and how do I build better relationships? The main thing is caring about the other person, right? You have to put somebody else before you. You talked about humility and being humble, and it's not. I remember I tried to translate this into Spanish and it didn't work really well when I was in Nicaragua. But it's not thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less, right? And I see like how you interact with people is because you care. Like I can see that when you interact with people, that you genuinely care about them, and that's why. Like I think I told you this before. Like you're good at building relationships because you care about other people, and I think that's the main thing first. And without the example of Jesus, like
Yeah.
man, like that is the best example of building relationships. And if you don't care about other people, you're gonna have a hard time doing this stuff, right?
Yeah. So I think, like, right now when you said that, I was having some personal reflection about, you go, oh, I think that you're a great communicator and just like that. And I like to think that I communicate good with people, but the thing is that I can't ever go, I'm good enough. And the aspect of thinking, because again, that goes to the dichotomy, just being stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
I used to tell myself when I was first couple of years of my Christian life, being born again, I'm like, I don't want to be the guy I was yesterday on my best day, right? Because that guy is already gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new day, and I need to build. I need to keep building, right? Because I can easily slip away into my own selfishness and my own ideas and my own wants and desires. But it's seeking God every single day that helps me stay grounded. That growth is an everyday thing.
Oh yeah.
Leadership is an everyday thing. And I can't make any good decisions, or I can't be available if I'm not constantly doing those things.
Yeah.
So that's my personal reflection. Really, is just to make sure that I'm learning something new every day. That I'm starting off my day correct, and that to know that I can do better than the guy yesterday. Not that this is a competition with myself. It's just that it's a personal growth thing.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I guess one last thing, like you said, good enough. And the same Greg Plitt, I talked about him earlier. He said, is good enough good enough? Like he's like, you'll never know if good enough is good enough until the last hour, right? And then by that, if you weren't good enough, if what you did, like he's talking more about of a performance from an athletic standpoint, but like is good enough good enough?
And let me reiterate on that. I mean, it's not okay. So again, like you said, it's not about performance, and my good enough is not trying to be good enough for anybody, even myself. Yeah, it's living my life to the fullest potential.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because
I'm good. I don't need to work on this, right? That's a closed mind.
Because, our Father's not looking for performance.
Right.
He's not worried about how much sacrifice I can make. Although obedience is important, but in that obedience, it's just the relationship that he wants from us. Yeah. And through that, that's why I'm able to say, I can be better than the guy yesterday, because I know that the Father has so much more room for me to grow. And like you said, at the end of my life, when I'm asked the question, what did you do with what I gave you? I can honestly say that I did as much as I possibly could with everything that you gave me. It wasn't always perfect. Yeah. But he already knows that. Yeah. It's a rhetorical question. Yeah. It's just, but I want to know for myself, because I think that's part of leadership, is knowing it's that goal to go past, set the bar, and then keep setting the bar, and then keep setting the bar, so that a way when your children or my children or whoever else's children go, I can't do this, you can go back to that faith resume to say, when I was down here and I didn't think I could see over here, these are all the steps that I made to get there. And all of them were a hard accomplishment. Nothing was easy. But I had to say, tomorrow's going to be a better day, and I can be better today. Yeah. So, and it's just one of those things, again, it's different for everybody. I had to learn that the hard way with some questions I had, even about personal growth with people that I know. I've got tight relationships. Again, I don't want to say a name, but... and I was told, well, John, that person needs to unfold the way God has that plan for them to unfold because
Yeah.
he knows them before. He knows them way better than you know them. So
Yeah.
your expectation of where they should be in their Christian walk is not the same expectation that he has for you.
Yeah.
Because their life, he goes, and what really hit me hard is he says, the way they're trying might seem very minute to you, but it could be more than what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way more than what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's not good because it reminded me of like when the woman gave
The widow. I was
yeah.
just thinking that with the 2 coins or whatever it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we think about that as, like a giving kind of deal thing, but it's also
It's a good example of
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
it's also just just because a person's doing less doesn't mean it's not more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And there's some people that can't, I don't say can't, right? We're all different. And we all have different paths. We all have different walks. God has different things in our lives, right? So the things that I see may not be, like the things that I feel called to do may not be the same thing as you. And I'm like, hey, why are you doing that, man? You need to be doing this. No, man, that goes back to the misconceptions, man. Like, it's not. We're not all on the same one. But the good enough, like, I remember hearing Eric Thomas talk about in the video. He's like, the Eric Thomas I was this many years ago wouldn't have been able to do this today. And you're absolutely right. 100%, it's a lifelong deal. Learning is a lifelong deal. Firmly believe in education, not necessarily book sense, right? Like, we should always be learning something. And I think, like, tell you right now, like, I might be pretty good at some things, right? But if I say, like, I'm good, that essentially is, I'm good, I don't need to improve on that, that's a lie, right? That's pride.
mm-hmm.
And I have to be the best version of myself for my family, for everybody around me, the community, all that. And yeah, so when people say, good enough, that's good enough. I'm like, oh, every time I hear that at work, I'm like, that's good enough. Good enough for government work, which is kind of funny for what we do. It's like, oof.
And yeah. You had brought up something to me too. Again, it's like, saying that we're not good enough or not smart
Mm-hmm.
enough, we're setting an internal goal. We don't even know. We're writing it down in our hearts. And we're like, I'm never going to be able to pass that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm here, and that bar has already been set, and there's no further to go because mentally, physically, spiritually, I'm not able to get there, right? But we can break that because it's a lie,
Right, 100%.
and then we start setting the right goals to get to the right places. But we can't sit there and say that we're not capable of doing things. But we've already decided we're not going to try. So I had a bad habit of doing this, especially around people who are really smart, right? And I'm like,
you ain't got to worry about that right
yeah.
now.
I've been like, I'm not smart enough to do that. I'm not as smart as you are. And I had those same people turn around and say, why are you saying that?
I'm glad they said that to you because you are smart.
And they're like, look, I didn't know how to do this or this or this. I'm like, I didn't know how to send emails professionally. But you do enough of them, guess what? You're going to get good at it.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I think he read somewhere, and I don't know the true statistic on it, but it's like you need to do something over like 10,000 times to become an expert in it or whatever, right? I might be a little bit off or whatever, but the point is, it's the repetition, right? And that's a lot of times to do it. So think about it. Like, I mean, if you think you're going to be great at something after 100 times, you're way off.
Yeah,
right?
You're 2 digits off.
Yeah, and so,
like
and even at that, even the best minds in the world are not always right? Because we're not, we don't know everything, we don't have all the knowledge, we don't have all the know-how. It's the whole point is just we strive to be better.
Yeah.
That's it. For ourselves.
Yeah.
And, that way we're able to do the things that we're asked to do. And do them well, and steward that well, and don't put that expectation on anybody else except when you're encouraging somebody.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it'll keep going and going, and but it's something that's important, and I see things, and I see that going back to the identity of people, and like people say, I've heard people at work, I hear people all the time say, I'm not this, or I can't do that because I'm not this, and and I don't know why, but like I feel it here. It's like I was like that, and just to hear somebody say it, it just like it hurts. It hurts for somebody, especially if it's somebody I care about. And did I tell you? I guess. Well, one last thing, because we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep going, right? But did I ever tell you why? Not why, but the one thing that kind of led me to going to be a missionary. Did I ever tell you the story about the girls?
You
In the
might have
English?
mentioned something, but I wouldn't remember now.
So, the first time I went to Nicaragua, we were there to drill a water well for a community that didn't have water. Right, we're there for 1 week, and there was 2 young ladies that were taking English classes, and so we talked. You know, their English was pretty good. It was better than my Spanish at the time, and which was a low bar, but it was pretty good. And so, one of them was studying for a test. She had to pass a test to get a certain certification, certain level, and then she could get the job that she wanted. And she looked at me and she said, "I'm not from." What did she say? She said, "I'm not as smart as you because you're from the United States and I'm only from Nicaragua." And like when she said that, it just like pierced my heart. Like I don't really know this lady that well, right? But to hear somebody saying that like she felt that she was inferior because of where she was from. Like it hurt. I remember telling her, I was like, "Look, I was like, I'm not smarter than you because I'm from the United States, right?" I was like, "I may not even be smarter than you. Like, you know a second language better than I know my, second language." And I was like, I just had more opportunities. You know, I was fortunate to be where I'm from, right? To be born where I was, and I had those opportunities. But that, and I told her that, and I was like, "Don't ever think that about yourself, right?" But that was the one thing from that trip that stuck with me the most. And when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I hadn't quite made up like, "Oh, I want to be a missionary and do this for free." It kept going back to that lie that she believed that she was inferior because she was from Nicaragua, and ultimately that's what I think guided me to go back there to give people the opportunities that they don't have there, to show them there's more out there in this world. And I went there to teach English, got put in charge of all the business classes, got put in charge of an advanced mathematics elective. That's how I met my wife, who was the math teacher. And then now look at it. 5-6 years later, now doing leadership life groups because I got put in charge of a business program for a school in Nicaragua. So it's awesome. Cool. So before we close, man, I really appreciated you. Like, I felt honored that you wanted to be in my life group when you sent me that text message like, "Hey, is this your group? Because if it's your group, I want to do it." I feel honored for that, man, and I just want to let you know I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man, I've been honored to be here, and not being biased when I throw this out. That was the best life group I've ever been to. So
I accept that. I accept that. I'll take that. No, that's good.
Not a knock on anybody else's life group. It's just you're a great teacher.
Appreciate that.
You leave room for everything, and so I think that's important. It's not one-sided. You leave plenty of room for growth. You're not trying to judge anybody and where they're at. You're just, you're helping us be honest about where we need to be. And so, hands down, my favorite group I've been to so far. So
I appreciate that.
But we're not going to leave the bar there because I think you're gonna do even better life groups.
We're gonna go up, do it again, and help as many people as we can. So on that note, man, you want some ice cream?
Yeah.
All right, let's go get some ice cream.
All right.